And for this university then, what was your living situation at that point?
I lived with my mum. Yeah. My mum even lived with me after that. We always lived together, my mum and I. And even now, my mum lives between my brothers and I.
And what triggered the idea to start modeling?
Well, I got scouted when I was 14 by Elite Model Management. I was at Green Market Square, a market in Cape Town. And a man approached me and said he worked for Elite Models. And then they got me to go to a modeling casting. And my mum and her friend came along. And they really sussed the people out and said, there's no ways I'm going to be able to travel or anything like that. But yeah, they wanted to take me overseas. But my mum said, absolutely not. And then my mum wouldn't let me do modeling until I was, when I was older. I had more people scouting me. I won a modeling competition with Storm Modeling Company, and they gave me a free portfolio. And then, I just got into the modeling because it was sort of as a young person, it's a good way to earn money, to buy clothes and all the things you've always dreamed of,
So you're studying psychology and you're doing modeling at the same time. How long did that last for, both of those?
Well, until Epstein kidnapped me.
All right, let's go back then. So what year was it approximately when Epstein kidnapped you?
It was 2002. So I matriculated in the year 2000. And then I obviously had like a year off, and then deciding what I wanted to do. And then I, went into psychology and philosophy. And I was doing modeling, and I also used to do other work like promotional events. I do like waitressing jobs. There's a lot of other things I've done along the years. I've worked at restaurants many times. I know all the stories of working at a restaurant.
We left off, you were about to tell us the backstory of how Epstein came to kidnap you.
Yeah, well, it was very weird. I had just started modeling, and my dream was to make a lot of money from modeling, because you hear these stories. It was the time of Kate Moss and Cindy Crawford and all these beautiful supermodels, and I'd already been scouted by a few agencies, so it just seemed like a dream come true. My mum also did modeling actually in the 70s, so it was something I was quite familiar with, but my parents didn't want me to do modeling, of course, and I can understand why now, because it's not exactly the best profession for anyone. I mean, it's a great thing to do on the side. But anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. So what happened is a friend of mine and I went to a restaurant bar, because what they do is they have free drinks for models. It's a sneaky way to sort of get the girls in and get some rich men coming there and stuff, I suppose. But I mean, it wasn't really like that there, but I don't think I was very young and innocent. But anyway, this girl, Naja Hill, who worked for Fox News later on, she approached me and she said, "Oh, a man's bothering me. Can I please stand with you and your friend? And, please save me." So we were like, of course, like, come speak to us. We wanted to like help her out. And then she started like telling me how she, her friend here was here from America. His name was Jeffrey Epstein, and he owned his own island in the Caribbean. She said he was like the king of America, and he was here with Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey. And she said his best friend, Leslie Wexner, owned Victoria's Secret. And they, he could really help me with my modeling career. So she said, would I like to meet him? So obviously I said, oh my gosh, yes. Because, as a young person, it just seemed like a dream come true. It was like, because I'd been like, my mum always taught me about positive intent, and I was always dreaming and hoping, dreaming for the best things to happen. So I was like, oh my God, my dreams are coming true. So, sorry, this always makes me anxious talking about this. Anyway. So then we drove along to the restaurant where they were having dinner. It was about like a 5-10 minute drive from where we were. We were at a place called Usaka on Kloof Street in Cape Town. They were at Beluga, which is a restaurant on Prestwich Street in Greenpoint. So it's about literally like a 10-minute drive from where we were. So we drove along, and, I almost didn't believe that what the woman was saying was true. But, we walked in, and sure enough, there they were. Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker, Jeffrey Epstein, who I'd never heard of, and they were having dinner with a few government officials. When we walked in, they all like Spacey and Epstein and Clinton and Tucker, they all stood up. The government officials didn't, but those four all stood up and shook my hand. And and they were all busy eating dinner. So I was like, oh my God, like as a young person, like I was just like, whoa, I'd never seen a celebrity in my life. And on top of it, these celebrities were actually stopping eating dinner to stand up and shake my hand. And I was just like, what the hell is going on here? You know, but I was just like starstruck, to be honest. And then when Clinton held onto my hand, he held onto my hand for like at least 1 or 2 minutes. Like he shook my hand and then he started talking to someone else like this, and he just kept holding my hand and had a conversation with the other person, kept holding my hand for quite a long time, like at least 1 minute, and then looked back at me and said, nice to meet you. And, you know, I've seen one more story like that with that guy, the one who recently was found dead, the one who fell off a balcony. I can't remember his name. He was like one of the Backstreet Boy people, or not the NSYNC or something. You know the one.
Yeah, I know who you mean. Liam Payne.
Yeah, tragic. But he said Puff Daddy did that to him, held onto his hand for a very long time. It's the only time I've ever heard of that. Because I don't understand why he did that, because I've shaken many people's hands over the years and no one's ever actually done that, where you have the cheek to hold onto someone's hand, start having a conversation with someone else and actually hold onto their hand. Like it's quite intimidating, you know, especially as a young person. I just turned 20, you know, my birthday's in July, so I turned 20 in July. I met them in September. So I was barely 19. I was young. You know, what's the difference between 19, 20, 18, whatever? We're all still kids regardless anyway. But back then we were really naive. Anyway, so then, you know, after that, the girl Naja Hill contacted me because we left the restaurant after about 10 minutes. And then she said that Epstein wanted to see my modeling portfolio because he thought I had like potential with, you know, Victoria's Secret. And then they arranged the casting the next day. And she said, would I like to go to see the president's speech before? You know, Clinton, well, he was you know, he just stopped being president by then. So we went to watch a speech he did at the Western Cape Peninsula, the Technicon, the Western Cape Technicon. And while he was doing the speech, Kevin Spacey was filming everyone in the hall, the students included. And it was like a very basic hall. We were all sitting on like plastic chairs. It wasn't anything fancy or, you know, it wasn't at all what you'd expect. Like it was just like a little podium for Clinton. There wasn't like, you know, it was nothing like you'd expect for a Clinton speech. But it was weird that Kevin Spacey was filming all the people all around. And then afterwards we went and stood outside and we were standing with them, and then all the students and everyone was circling around, like, but they were told to stay around, you know, in a circle, because also they closed the whole highway off, but they still kept filming all the people, you know, and I don't know why, obviously at the time, you know, still don't really know why. But, you know, they closed off the whole highway for us when we drove there. There were police cars everywhere. Like they came off every ramp. Like when you're going down, like there were police in front, and then this ramp would be closed, and then they'd come off the ramp. You know, it was like I've never seen anything like that. Like not even in a movie. It was. So you know, I was very. It was just all very daunting and overwhelming, and also for me at the time exciting, because I really believed that, you know, these people were going to help with my modeling career. You know, Kevin Spacey was very unfriendly the whole time. It was almost like he didn't want me there. It was very, very, very weird. Maybe he was, I don't know. So they basically staged a modeling casting, and 3 women sat across a long table, and they looked at my modeling book. They said that they were for Karen models. Their names were Sarah Killen, Andrea Mitrovic, and Cindy Lopez. While the modeling casting was going on, Bill Clinton walked through the room. He walked like past me, you know, and went into another room. It was like a whole big adjoining suite where him and Epstein were staying, it seemed. And he was like, hi, everyone. He saw the modeling casting taking place, and off he walked. And I smelled it, like I've said before, a very weird smell coming out of that room. When he opened that door, a very weird smell came out. Anyway, so then they told me to go see Epstein with my modeling book. So I went through, and he looked through my book, and he said, right, he thinks I'll be perfect for Victoria's Secret. And then within, they left that day. I left the casting, and then Leslie Graff from Epstein's office started phoning and arranging my visa, my traveling, and everything. And I said, I don't have any money, and they said, you don't need money. We're going to deduct everything, the flights and all of that from your modeling work. So, I thought, okay, I've still got my diary from that year with where I wrote down everything I packed. It was very basic. I was taking I even packed my own towel. I thought I was going to some apartment where I was so naive. I thought if you're going somewhere, you've got to take a towel, So anyway, I arrived there after a 20-hour flight from South Africa. I barely slept on the flight because I was so excited, thinking, oh my God, I'm going to make all my family's dreams come true. I'm going to help my mum and my brothers. Everything's going to get better for us all. And then, a man collected me at the airport in a black car and drove me to the modeling apartments, 301 East 66th Street, the modeling apartments that Epstein owned. And I got into the apartment and I was looking out the window and I was just like, whoa, because, coming to New York from South Africa, it was so different. South Africa is such a different place compared to New York. I was like, wow. I remember exactly looking out of that window. And just anyway, then the phone rang because there was a phone in the apartment. It was Sarah Kellen, and she said, pack your things, we're going to the Caribbean. So I obviously assumed it was for a modeling job or something. I mean, I didn't have a bikini packed with me. It was October in New York. New York's cold in October. So I didn't, and why would one need a bikini in New York? Anyway. The car came back to collect me. They drove me to Teterboro Airport. The plane took off. He started touching me in between my legs. And I panicked. I immediately knew that if I didn't do what they wanted, they would kill me. Sarah Kellen and Andrei Metrovich sat there laughing while it happened. Yeah. So I was trapped. And it was a very, very, very frightening time. And you know what? My name was not on that flight log, which is also bizarre because it makes you realize that no flight log is accurate. They left my name off that flight log. So basically, if I'd gone missing, my family would have thought I'd gone missing in New York. They would have had no idea I'd been taken to the island. And that makes you wonder how many other people's names were put on that flight log that went missing.
So where was your mind at by the time you landed?
By the time we landed there, I was a different person. I'd been, it was like something weird snapped inside of me. And I was no longer in control of my life. Because before I always felt in control of my life, But I was no longer in control of my life because I was trapped on an island with some of the world's most powerful people. And I knew that I had no option other than to do what they wanted.
Did they take your passport from you and stuff like that? Or
yeah, they had my passport. They had everything. And also, even on the island, if I wanted to try get away, how was I going to try get away from the island? What, swim through shark-infested waters? Absolutely not. I'm not strong enough a swimmer. And it was just very traumatic. There was no getting away from me. Once you're there, and that's that.
Were there any other models though you could confide in?
When we first arrived, it was just Epstein and Andrei Metrovich and Sarah Kellen. But then the next day, another girl arrived. Because at first he was taking me into the bedroom. I was getting called to the bedroom, and then the next day another girl came, and then when we were watching a movie, she started giving him and then I got even more frightened. Because, I'd only ever had 2 boyfriends, and I was just like, oh my God. It was just horrible, 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 horrible. Sorry.
You're okay. Take your time.